Hi guys, it's Mr. Green today talking. In lieu of us being able to offer our normal sample lesson, this video lesson is going to give you a little bit of an insight into geography as an option choice. I'm obviously very biased, but I personally think that geography is one of the best subjects you can do and also one of the most interesting. This little lesson is going to show you a little bit more information about the course, and then I'm going to give you a sample lesson of the types of things we would do when you get to GCSE. So, there are lots and lots of different topics that we do at Geography GCSE, and I've just taken 5 here as examples of the sorts of things that you would be doing. So, one of the topics is called the living world, and essentially we're looking at the different ecosystems that exist, and we go into a lot of depth into the tropical rainforest and the hot desert, and we look at those places. We look at the biodiversity, we look at the plants, the animals, the adaptations, and we look at the challenges and the opportunities they are presented. For example, in the tropical rainforest, we're going to look at deforestation in this lesson. We're going to look at how tourism is used in the desert. We're going to look at how things like desertification are going to cause problems in the future as well. We also look at natural hazards. So we look at tectonic hazards, which are earthquakes and volcanoes. We go into quite a lot of depth there, and we also look at how they can be managed as well. So really go to town on looking at, okay, we know that the tectonic hazards exist. We look at how do they happen, why did they happen, and where did they happen. And then we look at, well, how do we solve this problem? How do we look at this issue and what can we do so that people aren't impacted as badly? And for me, that's what geography is all about. It's working out what the problem is and then finding the solution. We also look at meteorological processes, and that's a fancy way of saying the weather and climate. We look at hurricanes, we look at climate change, and we really go into depth again at how they can be governed sustainably and managed in the future. They're the kind of physical topics. We also look at some human geography as well. We look at something called urbanization or urban issues and challenges. And basically, that topic's all about how cities are growing at a huge rate. We now have a huge number of mega cities, and a mega city is a city with 10 million people or more propping up all around the world. We're going to go into and look at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. It's a huge megacity, and it's a city that is very culturally important on the world stage. You might have seen the Olympics that was held there, the World Cup was held in Rio, and I think most people have an idea of what it looks like with the big Christ the Redeemer statue looking over the bay. But we go into a lot of depth and we go, okay, but what has the impact of all these people in Brazil flooding to Rio had? And we look at things called favelas. Now, favela is a South American name for a slum. We look at crime in the favela, and we look at how they're being changed in the future. We also look at Liverpool in the same sort of lens and look at what has happened to Liverpool in the past that has shaped the city that a lot of us know it is today. We also look at something called the changing economic world, and essentially that's about how the economic processes that happen all around us, we learn what they are and we learn what impact they're having. So we'll look at LICs, low income countries, like Nigeria, and we try to understand why they're so much worse off than others. Why is it that Nigeria is not on the same level as development as the UK? We look at companies like Shell, who are exploiting Nigeria for their natural resources. And we are going to explore, well, okay, why are they doing that? And is that actually going to benefit the people that live there in the future? I mean, the last little topic I've chosen to have a little talk about is fieldwork. So you will have the chance to undertake 2 field trips outside of the academy. We have to do them. And in those field trips, you'll select, adapt, use a variety of skills to investigate questions. So we'll go out into the field, into cities and towns, and we'll look at, okay, what can we do to measure the impact people are having on this area? What can we do to measure the impact of physical processes on this area? And it's a really good opportunity for us to kind of get out of the classroom, get out of school, and do something that is one of my favourite parts of geography, because in my opinion, the best thing about the subject is that we are studying the world around us. So going out into the real world and having a look at that, I think is really important and really interesting as well. So about the course, we do the AQA GCSE Geography course. We do that exam board because, in my opinion, it is the most interesting topics. In terms of the assessment, there are 3 exams. There are 2 1.5-hour exams and 1 1-hour exam as well. And in terms of our lesson assessment, it's a bit of a mixed approach. We'll be doing our triple S tasks every second or third lesson, where you do a short exam question and we come back and give some marks as well. There'll obviously be a lot of questioning lessons. There'll be a lot of homework tasks where we're looking at quizzes as well. And we also do longer exams like mock exams and end of unit exams where we go into a little bit more depth. But usually it won't be too different to what it is now. The difference would be but you'd be getting exam questions, style questions, rather than the generic questions we give you at the moment in Year 9. So not a huge amount of change, it's just a bit more specific. In terms of careers, it's very difficult, I think, to talk about careers in geography because unlike a lot of subjects, geography is very, very, very broad. It encompasses a huge number of different jobs and different avenues you can explore. The most obvious ones I can think of are things like travel. So loads of people who do geography are interested in travel, going and working in the travel industry, going and traveling the world themselves. They're really interested in how tourism works. They're really interested in how how different countries and cultures interact and jobs in that. A lot of people go into things like mining and transport. Again, very, very, very linked to geography. Into geoscience, which is essentially the people that look at things like earthquakes and volcanoes. The civil service is on there as well. The civil service is a huge branch of the government and it encompasses a huge number of different jobs related to things like data analysis, looking at the law, looking at politics as well, and there's other things on there. I'm going to show you this little chart here. And this is talking about A-level, but usually a lot of people have this opinion of geography or opinion of history or opinion of any subject really, that you do that and you go, well, what jobs will geography give me? And this is a survey of A-level students and what they did. So in 2016, of the ones, 82% ended up going to university. Now, universities see geography as a really, really, really good subject. It's known as a core subject, and a lot of the top universities like you to have subjects like geography because it shows you've got a really high level of thinking. But after university, only 18% of them actually carried on with geography. You can look at the jobs here. People went into maths, people went into medicine, people went into biology, people went into engineering and computer science, people went into law, business and administration, a bit of history as well. And this is a really interesting point, really. I did geography at university. And I spent some time recently looking through the people that graduated at the same time I did and looking at the types of jobs they were doing. And I was really, really surprised because even though they'd done geography, a lot of them were doing jobs I never really considered a job that you could get from doing geography. I know one of them that's done an extra law conversion and she's a lawyer now. I know somebody that after studying geography actually went on to work at the charity Oxfam and she now works as like the outreach program manager there. I also know someone as well who's gone into the mining industry and his job is he's actually gone out to Australia from his job and he works in mining metals and precious metals out there and he gets paid a huge amount of money to do that. So my point is really that I don't want to get bogged down by this idea that there's only 1 or 2 job options. In my opinion, geography opens up a huge number of doors into a lot of potential different careers, and it's always good to have that on your CV, in my opinion. So what do students have to say about it? I went on the Royal Geographical Society website to see what they said. And this is Martin in Kent, and he said, geography is one of those lessons that makes you realise how the world works, and it gives you the grounding before you even begin to go places. It opens your eyes to things around you and gives you a look at how cultures work and how the world can be deadly as well as beautiful. And I think he sums that up really, really well, that we live in this very beautiful planet, but at the same time, you learn there's a huge level of inequality, and also the planet is a very, very dangerous place as well. I think geography is the perfect subject, kind of links those two things together, enabling us to fully understand the world around us. In terms of how parents and carers can support, I've kind of come up with 3 main themes here, and they're as follows. So encouraging children to engage with the home learning that is set. We're going to look at home learning on the next slide, but essentially we set weekly homeworks, and it's really important for pupils to engage in those homeworks as a way to consolidate the learning that we're doing in lesson. The stuff we set for homework is designed specifically to improve their knowledge of things they've studied in the classroom. I think it's also dead important that we are discussing geography at home, like current affairs and the news. So if we're at home, we can put the news on, we can put the radio on, and if a topic comes up, so for example, they're closing borders to Brazil at the moment, it's a good opportunity to talk about that, and hopefully we'll find that as the pupil progresses through the GCSE, they might be able to start adding some things in that they've learnt in lesson as well. And finally, this is a really easy one. Just watching some geographical documentaries at home. So I was watching A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough recently, and I thought it was excellent. Some of the knowledge in those documentaries are outstanding. There was a whole episode on volcanoes recently. I think that knowledge there would translate really, really well into their studies in the lesson as kind of an extra supplement to that as well. And in terms of the home learning, we use a blended approach. So the home learning will not be the same every week. We use things like multiple choice quizzes, exam practice, and research tasks. For revision, we use a variety of paper and electronic materials. You'll be given lots of revision booklets that have been made by myself or another member of the staff. And we'll also look at getting revision guides as well, made by the exam board. And we also use a platform called Seneca Learning, which has been proven to have a really good impact on exam grades in the future. So, what we'll do now is I'm going to give you a sample lesson that would look very, very similar to one you would get at GCSE. And the title of this lesson is Deforestation in the Amazon. So, I'd like to pause the video, have a look at that little picture in the bottom left. I'd like to see if you can describe what has happened in this picture. Once you think you've had a little go, you can unpause the video and we'll carry on. Okay, hopefully we can see there that in this small area here, there might have been some of the trees being chopped down because we're in this rainforest region and there's now clearly a little bit of space that's been left over. So with GCSE, we look at a lot more tier 3 words. So we've got 3 words here: biodiversity, deforestation, and logging. So biodiversity is the variety of life in the world or particular habitat. So the rainforest has a very high biodiversity, lots of different species of plants and animals, whereas somewhere like the desert would have a very low biodiversity. Deforestation is the word we use for the chopping down and removal of trees. And then logging is the specific business of cutting down them trees and transporting the logs to sawmills. And that wood is then used for tables, for furniture, for construction as well. So deforestation is the general term, but specifically when it's for business reasons like that, we tend to call it logging. So in GCSE geography, we do look at quite a lot of figures or maps and graphs, and this here is a really good example of that. So, this is a map showing how forest cover has changed since the year 2000. And there are 2 questions at the bottom there that says, which areas of the world are creating a reduction in forest covers, and are all places driving deforestation? What are the anomalies? Now, an anomaly is an area or something that does not fit the general pattern. So, there are 2 questions there. I'd like to pause the video again. I'd like to have a little go at them now. Okay, hopefully we've seen for the first one then, but the 2 areas I can see that are changing are Africa and South America. So Africa has seen a 10% reduction in its forest covers in the last 20 years, and South America has seen a 9% reduction. In contrast, it's very clear that not all places are deforesting. In North America, it's pretty much had no change, but in Europe and Asia, the amount of forests are actually increasing. I think that's a really important point, because I think you hear in the news and you hear in geography as well this big issue that all the rainforests are being chopped down, all the forests are being chopped down. But actually, that's not necessarily the case, because a lot of the forest and the rainforest in Asia isn't being chopped down at the same rate it is in Africa and South America. So there are obvious things that don't fit that pattern. So this is a graph focusing specifically on tropical rainforest deforestation. Now, the tropical rainforest is that biome. We've looked at it before in Year 7 and Year 8. It's mainly located in South America and Africa. And the question said, this is an exam-style question, describe the tropical rainforest deforestation rates over time. And to do that effectively, we use a method called T, which is trend, evidence, anomaly. So to give a trend, you are given the overall pattern. So between the pre-1700 and the 2010 period, my question to you would be, what is happening or what has happened to the amount of deforestation? And you should hopefully be able to tell me that overall, this is the trend, overall it has increased. It's increased from 10 million hectares in 1700 all the way up to 110 million hectares in 2010. And the evidence is me giving those numbers there. The anomaly is that what's weird about this chart is that it peaks here in the 1970s at 320 million, and since then it has reduced. And this is what I'd say is a perfect answer. So overall, tropical rainforest deforestation increases from 10 million hectares pre-1700 to 110 million hectares in 2010. The increase fluctuates, and fluctuates means going up and down, reaching a peak of 320 million between 1950 and 1979. Okay, so a lot of geography we're doing is we'll be looking at these types of graphs and seeing how they change. And again, they're one of these things that the first time you do them, they're very, very tricky. But once you've got through to the end of year 11, you'd be looking at this and you'd be using that T method without really even thinking about it, giving a trend, giving evidence. And again, more graphs on this one. So this one is showing the percentage change in annual deforestation. So the one in the green is where deforestation is happening, but it's slowing down. And the red is where the destruction of the rainforest is happening and it's speeding up. So looking at that graph, the countries along the right hand side here, I've got two questions for you to pause the video for. The first one, in which country is deforestation speeding up the fastest? And in which country is deforestation slowing down the most? So give the video a pause and unpause it with an answer. So I can see on there that the country that deforestation is speeding up the fastest is Indonesia, down here. And I can see that the country where the deforestation is slowing is Mexico up here. So Indonesia as an area, the deforestation is happening at a much, much, much faster rate, whereas in Mexico, it's still happening, but it's reducing quite slowly. Maybe we'll see in the future that some of these areas, the deforestation would reduce almost completely. So, the question that gets asked a lot is, why are we chopping down the rainforest? And the answer, like many things in life, is money. The rainforest contains a huge amount of natural resources, the wood, the minerals that are underneath the rainforest, and the ability to do agriculture or cattle farming as we're going to look at. So if we're looking at Brazil, Brazil is something called an NEE, a newly emerging economy, which basically means that it's not one of the poorest countries anymore, but it's nowhere near the level of places like the UK, France, and the USA. So it's in the middle. And essentially, they are now building roads into the forest so those logging firms can go in and take out valuable hardwood, which is worth thousands of pounds in richer economies like Europe. There are also farmers going in, making way for cattle, and burning the rest of the forest to make way for them. And that is leading to the destruction of the rainforest. And it's all to do with money when it comes down to it. So we're going to look at the 3 or 4 main reasons why the rainforest is being destroyed. So the first reason is because of subsistence and commercial farming. Commercial farming is essentially where we do farming on a mass scale. So Brazil is now the largest exporter of beef, and essentially what happens is, in order to graze the cattle, they chop down a huge amount of rainforest, they let the cattle graze on that part of the rainforest, and then once all the bits of grass and the twigs have been eaten, they set fire to it, they move on to another part, they chop down more rainforest, and as they keep doing that, the rainforest is destroyed. 43% of rainforest loss in the region of Mato Grosso was because of this, and that was an area almost half the size of France being destroyed for cattle farming, which is a huge figure. The second main reason is logging, and this involves cutting down trees for the sale of timber. And again, this timber is used to build homes, furniture, and the pulp is used to make paper and paper products. So this logging has a huge impact on the Amazon rainforest and on the deforestation as a whole. The third reason is mineral extraction. So the forests in Brazil are cleared to make way for huge mines. The Brazilian part of the Amazon has mines that extract iron, manganese, nickel, tin, tungsten, zinc, and even gold as well. But the problem is that when they go to extract these minerals, they're not just digging small holes in the ground. Huge mining companies will go into the area, they will clear huge amounts of rainforest, and then with massive building machinery, they will dig huge open mines into the Amazon and start mining these minerals out. Then they have to transport the minerals. So in addition to the huge miles and miles of land that's been destroyed for that mineral extraction, in addition to that, they then clear even more forest for roads as well. And that's a huge problem because the more rainforest we clear, the more impacts that will have on biodiversity and the more impacts that will have on the climate as a whole as well. So mineral extraction, a huge driver of deforestation. And the problem here is that a lot of the time when we talk about deforestation, we always hear people saying, well, why don't we just stop doing it? And I think that's a really important question because from our point of view as someone sitting down in the UK, from our perspective, they should stop it because we know that climate change is a big problem. We know that trees are important and that deforestation is not something that should be happening. But if you look at the average Brazilian, I think they'd argue something very differently. If you were in a country with an NEE and you had a decent amount of wealth, but you may be still struggling for education, you're still struggling to pay for good healthcare, and you had this huge amount of wealth on your doorstep in the forest, you can understand why they would want to try and use that wealth. Because if I had a box of money that was dug underneath my house, and that money was worth a huge amount, and I actually started digging for that, I don't think anyone would really blame me, even though it might have a negative impact on the area around me. So we have to understand that not everybody's life is the same as ours, and people are in different situations. So in that situation, it's entirely plausible that the average Brazilian and the Brazilian government, who are trying to make their country more developed, would actually think that mineral extraction is quite a good thing for their country to have. And the last one is something called energy development. So the Amazon River, most of us have heard of, is one of the largest or the largest river in the world alongside the Nile, and it runs directly through the Amazon rainforest. And what Brazil have tried to do is they've tried to create something called hydroelectric power. Now, essentially what they do is they build a dam which blocks the flow of the river, and then they build small holes that allow some of the water to flow through. In those holes, they add in a small windmill-like turbine, and as the water pushes that turbine and makes it spin, that spinning produces electricity. And that's really good because it is actually technically clean power, it's renewable energy. And Brazil have planned for 150 new dams just in the Amazon alone. However, as always, there are problems with this because those dams displace many people. So a lot of people who have lived in maybe areas of the Amazon rainforest their entire life have to move, because when they create these dams, they have to flood a huge area of land that was previously forest. So that forest is completely destroyed and deforested, but also the people that have lived there end up losing their home, they end up losing the place where they've grown up and lived, um, which is quite a big problem overall. So you can kind of play along here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you 4 images that we just looked at, and I want you just to jot down or have a think in your head which deforesting factor I am alluding to. So the first one, that is logging. So remember, logging was where those businesses go into the area, they extract the wood to sell to the richer economies in Europe. Hopefully you got that as mineral extraction. That one is energy production, which, as we just looked at, is the dams creating hydroelectric power. And the last one, that is that subsistence agriculture or farming, commercial farming, which is that cattle ranching, which is destroying huge swathes of rainforest. So, if in a normal GCSE lesson now, we would also set another small exam question. And the question is, discuss the reasons for deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. As part of a lesson today, I'd like you to have a go at answering this question. I've given you the 4 images there to help you. You can obviously rewind this video as well. And to answer that question, you need to choose 2 of those factors and explain how they cause deforestation. And if you did that in the real exam and you did it well with some good facts and evidence, you would get 5 or 6 marks. And this is quite a typical question that you might get in the GCSE paper as well. Okay, so I'll say that again. I'd like to have a go at this question. You need to discuss the reasons for deforestation. I would choose 2 of those factors and explain them. So I might choose logging and mineral extraction. And then from there, you can kind of work out everything else that is going along. So pause the video before I finish off, and then you can play it again. Okay, so that concludes this little video lesson. If you do have any questions about studying geography GCSE, please do speak to your teacher, or you can ask your head of year or someone you're in contact with to get in touch with Mr. Greenside. That's me. I really would invite you to ask any questions you have. Like I said, I am very biased at the start of the video. I do think geography is an amazing subject. But if there is anything you want to chat about, whether there's anything you're worried about, or anything you want to know if you're suitable for it, I can have that conversation with you at any point.